Greetings, Missouri Mid-South Conference. I bring you greetings from my home office in Texas, where I am. I have been for this weekend of Holy Week and Easter, and I will be returning back to the conference office on Tuesday. I bring you greetings and hope that your Holy Week and Easter time were filled with wonderful expressions of worship as we remembered Jesus' entrance into Jerusalem as an act of resistance, and in those expressions of speaking truth to power, which ultimately led to his execution, and yet the story and the reminder and the message that God's love triumphs all, that joy indeed comes in the morning, that even as death may seem like it has the last word, that it is God's love for all that will triumph and that will fill into our beings and beloved community in expressions of liberation and love. As you watch this, I am aware that tomorrow, Wednesday, April 4th, we as a global community will be commemorating the 50th year since the execution, this assassination, the murder of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. There will be many events held in many places, marches. In Washington, D.C., there will be a rally against racism and a Poor People's Campaign to commemorate not the death of Dr. King, but the light and the life and the love for which Dr. King strove so hard in preaching, in solidarity, and in his own life and ministry. But with us today, I want to remember the last place where he was, because that's the connection to the Missouri Mid-South Conference, which is Memphis, Tennessee. He went there as an expression of what he was doing at the end of his life and ministry, which is that he intentionally was going to places where there was more than just civil rights issues of a race, but what he realized at the end of his life and ministry was that this issue of intersectionality, meaning that we can't just talk about the rights of those persons of color without also talking about the rights and the issues of poverty and the socioeconomic conditions. And for Dr. King, also, we can't talk about race and poverty without also talking about war and the current war that was happening, because many of our men at the time, men of color who were poor, were the ones who were on the front lines of the Vietnam War. And so I invite us to think about why Dr. King was there. Sometimes we forget because of his assassination, but Dr. King was there to stand in solidarity, to march, and then to preach and to offer hope, Easter hope, if you will, to those sanitation workers. In 2008, NPR asked and listened to the stories of some of the sanitation workers of Memphis, Tennessee. And one sanitation worker, Mr. Taylor Rogers, shared the following that I thought we needed to hear as we listen, commemorating Dr. King's life and legacy, but also learning and stretching ourselves in the understanding of intersectionality, of race, of poverty, and of other conditions. Mr. Rogers says, "I had maggots run down in my shirts, and then maggots would go down in my shoes, and we worked in the rain, snow, ice. We had to. If we didn't, we'd lose our job. They said a garbage man wasn't nothing. All we wanted was some decency, some dignity. We wanted to be treated as men. So he said, this is it. 1,300 sanitation workers. We all decided that we wasn't going to take it no more. You know, if you bend your back, people will ride your back. But if you stand up straight, people can't ride your back. So that's what we did. We stood up straight and said, I am a man. 1,300 sanitation workers in Memphis marching and protesting the terrible working conditions and the poor living wage, the minimal living wage. This is where Dr. King was. This is what Dr. King expressed as not just our civil or human rights, but the right to have decency, the right to have dignity, the right to say to power of any kind, I am a person and I have goodness and integrity and worth and God's love within me. Treat me as such. This is where Dr. King was, even in his last sermon that now seems so hauntingly prophetic, that he would say, I will not see the promised land. I've been to the mountaintop, and here I see God's love, God's justice. My brothers and sisters of the Missouri Mid-South Conference, this is the legacy that we must continue to strive for. That Dr. King, that Jesus, that those who understand that justice must come from acts of resistance like Palm Sunday, that justice must come by standing in solidarity with the poorest and the most at risk, the voiceless, the powerless. But also that what we do, we must speak truth to power. And that like Good Friday, it may cause death. It may cause our own death. It may cause Jesus' death. It may cause Dr. King's death. But death will never have the final say. Injustice will never have the final say. That the expression of God's love will come, will be present in the midst of that injustice and in the work and the ministry of God's love for all. Easter is God's liberating love. So, my friends, what we must do if we are serious about being Easter people, what we must do if we are serious about honoring people and prophets like Dr. King and Fannie Lou Hamer and Mahatma Gandhi and Dorothy Day, is that we must be the acts of resistance in Palm Sunday expression. We must stand in solidarity with those who are the powerless, the voiceless, the poorest. And we must speak truth to power, even and especially if that means that we experience our own Good Friday, if it means that our church may be abandoned by everyone, if it means that our very life is at risk. That is Good Friday. But know that death of any kind can never have the last word. Because God's love in liberation, in truth, in expressions of justice and equity, God's love will conquer all, each day and every day. So, my brothers and sisters, may we be an Easter people and live it fully from Palm Sunday to Good Friday to liberative love in God, this day and forevermore. Amen.